Here are some of the craziest cults from every time period in history. The Thuggee. Back when most of humanity was still figuring out basic agriculture, one group in India had already perfected something far more sinister. For thousands of years, a secret society operated across the Indian subcontinent with one singular purpose: ritual murder in the name of the goddess Kali. They were called the Thuggee, and they are the most successful serial killers in human history. The Thuggee weren't your typical cult. They didn't live in compounds or wear matching robes. They were normal members of society, farmers, merchants, family men who would leave home for months at a time on what they called their business trips. And in a way, it was business. They would join traveling groups on the roads of India, gain their trust over days or even weeks, and then, when the moment was right, they'd strike. Their weapon of choice? A yellow silk scarf called a rumal. One quick twist around the neck, and it was over. The Thuggee believed that every person they strangled was a sacrifice to Kali, the Hindu goddess of destruction and time. And Kali apparently had quite the appetite. Here's what makes the Thuggee absolutely insane. They weren't some cult that lasted a few years or even a few decades. Historical records suggest they operated from as early as 1300 BC, all the way until the British Empire stamped them out in the 1800s. That's thousands of years of cult murder. The British East India Company estimated that the Thuggee killed approximately 1 million people, but some historians put that number closer to 2 million. The Thuggee had their own language, their own signs, and even an entire system of operation. They would scout travelers, identify wealthy targets, and plan their attacks with military precision. After the strangulation, they'd rob the bodies and bury them in carefully prepared graves, often using a special pickaxe that was itself considered sacred. Nothing was left to chance. They even had a retirement system. Once you'd strangled enough people, you could train the next generation. It was literally a multi-generational cult of murder. The British Army finally brought them down in the 1830s, capturing and executing thousands of Thuggee members. But even then, the cult's influence was so widespread that it took decades to fully eliminate. The word thug that we use today? Yeah, that comes directly from these guys. They were so notorious that their name became synonymous with violent criminals everywhere. Not exactly the legacy most cults are going for, but hey, they definitely made an impact. The Nizari Ismailis. While Europe was busy with crusades and feudalism in the 11th century, a different kind of religious movement was emerging in the mountains of Persia. These weren't your typical religious zealots. They were highly trained killers who operated from impenetrable mountain fortresses and pioneered the art of political assassination. They were so effective and so terrifying that their name became synonymous with murder itself. Meet the Nizari Ismailis, better known as the Assassins, the cult that literally created the word we still use today. The Assassins were founded in 1090 by Hassan is-Sabah, a charismatic leader who had broken away from mainstream Islam. Hassan seized control of a fortress in the mountains of northern Iran and declared it to be the headquarters of his new order. From this impregnable mountain stronghold, Hassan would launch a campaign of targeted killings that would terrorize the Middle East for nearly 2 centuries. The Assassins weren't mindless killers. They were surgical, precise, and terrifyingly patient. They would spend years infiltrating courts, gaining trust, becoming advisors or servants to their targets, and then strike when the moment was perfect. The Assassins killed crusader leaders, caliphs, and basically anyone else who threatened their interests. They built a network of fortresses across Persia and Syria, creating what was essentially a state within a state. At their peak, they held dozens of fortified positions and commanded the loyalty of thousands of followers. They didn't conquer territory with armies. Instead, they shaped politics through fear and targeted violence. Kings and generals preferred changing their laws rather than risk an assassin's blade. They finally met their match in the form of the Mongols. In 1256, the Mongol general Hulagu Khan decided he'd had enough of this mountain cult and their political murders. The Mongols besieged the assassin fortresses, and unlike previous armies, they didn't leave until every single assassin was killed.